Good evening. Thank you for coming to Candidate Night for this year's election for RMA board members. I'd like to welcome everybody on behalf of the board president, Jim Moore. Thank you. I'd like to just take a second and introduce Allison Moore and Les Coons. They're folks that are on the nominating committee as well, and they're going to be asking the questions of our candidates. Just a couple of reminders I want to talk about. The ballots will be going out next week, October 17th. Members who own 2 lots will receive a ballot in each package for the lot. Otherwise, it's 1 ballot per lot. Annual members meeting will be held Thursday, November 17th at 7 p.m. here at the RMA building. Members in good standing can cast their votes until then. As an incentive to get people to vote early, not necessarily often, there's going to be a grand prize. This year it's the iPad Air, and we have 6 Visa gift cards worth $50 each as an incentive. I also want to remind the candidates, RMA rules and the CC&Rs. Candidates for elective office may walk their precincts, i.e. door to door, within the RMA community, but campaign workers, volunteers cannot. Candidates may distribute leaflets as they walk their precincts, but campaign workers and volunteers cannot. Candidates from outside the gates of RMA must show proper identification, have access come in through the gate, and proof that they're running for the political office. Political signs are allowed only on private property, not in the common area. With the exception of the townhouse lots, circle lots, cottage lots, McKim lots, those signs be placed in common areas but within 10 feet of the dwelling itself. And then obviously all signs must be removed within 3 days after the election. Couple of things, gentlemen. If we could keep the eye gouging, mudslinging to a bare minimum. Let's not talk about each other's mothers, okay? So we'll have a clean, fair. We're not going to have any interruptions unless it's an update on the baseball score. So otherwise, the process is going to be, we have 5 questions for you. It's going to go in order, and then it's going to rotate the next question, if that makes sense to you. We're not necessarily here to debate you or to interrupt you. We're just here to hear your answer to that question. And you're going to have roughly 2 minutes. So if you keep it to 2 minutes, you're not going to hear from me. If it gets a little past that, then I might give you a casual reminder that we are on a little bit of a time limit. Any questions before the process starts? Okay, what we're going to do is each of the committee members have a series of questions to ask, and then we will start that process. For you folks in the audience, if you have questions, yes, fill them out. We'll come around and pick them up. We'll have a quick halftime towards the end. We'll go over the questions, and then we'll reconvene, and there will probably potentially be additional questions for specifically individual candidates, but everyone will have an opportunity to answer those questions. So, any questions, gentlemen? Okay. Allison.
Hey, question number 1. Why do you want to serve on the RMA Board of Directors? And we'll start with Alex.
Well, first, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad to see all your faces out here this evening in competition with the baseball game. I'm sure many of you are running your DVRs on overdrive tonight. And I also want to, before I begin, I want to wish everyone else on this panel up here a lot of luck because whoever wins, we've got important issues ahead of us, and we'll all sink or swim together. So good luck to all of you on the board. So the question is, why do I want to serve on the Rancho Murieta Association board? Well, I moved up here in 2000 with my lovely wife to be closer to my father-in-law. And Rancho Murieta is a unique place. I mean, there's no question about it. It's got a little bit of rural feel to it, but a little bit of suburbia, close enough to Folsom. Really unique place. So that really grew on me very quickly. And I want to make sure that this board can make a connection with the community. That's very important to me. And we make a connection with the community by being accountable and by being transparent. And I would view that, I'll take a moment to explain that, I would view accountability and transparency as very important. I would like to hold office hours, to hear from my neighbors. I think that's very important. I don't know if there's an avenue to do that right now. I would want to make sure that I have phone access, people have phone access to me, can contact me during regular business hours, of course. And I would also want to see minutes that are accessible, board minutes that are accessible. I went on the Rancho Murieta website today, and the latest board minutes are from 2014. So I would like to see that be addressed. So accountability and transparency to the people of this community is very important. I'd like to involve and unite the community, make a connection with the community, between the board and the community, but also between the boards that exist in this community, right? So the RMA plus, the CSD, any other government agencies, to be able to make those connections are very important as well. I feel like my time as a public servant, I've been a teacher for 24 years, speaks volumes for my ability to be able to work with people. I think I'm able to juggle diverse groups, people with different constituencies. And that's what I've been doing, sitting on PTSA boards, sitting on curriculum committees, school boards. So I've got a history of working with the public and finding common ground, and I feel like that would be my contribution to this board, and I feel like I'm ready to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
My name is Rob Brown. I moved to Rancho Murieta in 1997 with my wife and at the time one kid, and for the past 19 years, I've raised 3 kids in this community, and I would categorize it as I've basically been ingrained in the community for that period of time. My kids took Taekwondo in this very room. I've been involved in the various sports programs. Been a member of the country club for a long time. Played tennis with Greg here quite often, or I haven't lately, but quite often. Been to more ETC events than I can count. My kids fished the lakes. So I've been not only at the parades, but I've been in the 4th of July parade. So you name it in the community, and I've probably been involved in it. Basically, I don't come to the board with an agenda. I come because I think that the boards that have come before me, and that includes the board today, knowing the people that are on the board, they operate with essentially the best interests of the community at heart, and that's what it comes down to. Not some political agenda, but at the end of the day, the question is, what is best for the community? And that's what the decisions are based on. And so I would like to follow in those steps of the people that came before me and the people here, is that I come to the board with that in my heart, is what's best for the community. I plan to stay in this community as I transition now from raising kids, as I plan to transition into, hopefully a retiree in this community, to just complete the spectrum there and have those views of both sides and bring that to the table.
Thank you. Greg?
Thank you. My name is Greg Mason. I've lived here in Rancho Murieta for the past 8 years. I currently reside with my wife, who's a retired Albioni middle school teacher. And prior to our moving out here, we've always been in the Elk Grove, Sheldon area, so we were very familiar with the community. Just thought it was kind of a retirement community until we moved out here and realized that there's a lot of diversity of families. And I was a police officer in the 80s. For the last 26 years, I've been an insurance fraud investigator. And I think Probably the thing that I have taken away the most from that is in being an investigator for 30 years, I've learned the necessity of gathering information before you make decisions. Most people tend to do the opposite. They tend to take a position on something, and then they gather evidence or information to support their position, rather than the other way around. And I've just learned that in a position like this, you've got to be able to access information, you've got to gather information, you've got to listen to what you're being told. Unfortunately, most of the time when proposals are made to a board, they're made by people who already have a bias towards their position, what they want, and they don't give you complete information. So I think sometimes boards are stuck with trying to make decisions with limited information, and I think that my real asset that I bring is that I dig, I question. I want to gather all the information there is on every side of a position before making a decision on it. Also mindful, the insurance industry is extremely heavily regulated. And when it comes to insurance fraud investigations, there's a ton of regulations. So I've learned that trying to get an effective resolution while working within the rules and regulations that are posed to you is sometimes a challenge. And I think that working on the board, I'm mindful of the duties that we have, but I'm also mindful of the limitations we have. And we can't solve all the problems of the community. So first thing, as a board member, the first thing you want to do is learn to what is our authority? What things can we decide on? And then once we're tasked with that, then effectively dig out the information and try to make informed decisions.
Thank you. And Jeff?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Moorhead. I really believe the needs of the many outweigh the views of the few, and I'm motivated to be on the board because of what I've been observing between our new developer and Solus. And I don't have any skin in the game. I'm not coming down on one side or the other. I do believe that as a board member, I have to remain impartial. But I am concerned, and I will say this, there are 2 people on the board already that have a Solus affiliation. There are 2 people running for the board that have a Solus affiliation. And my concern is that when you've got a board, even though I'm quite sure the gentlemen here are going to govern from a position of honor, when you've got people with an agenda, I don't know that that is the best thing for the Rancho Murieta as a whole. So I have concerns about that. I will also tell you that in looking at what's been proposed and also looking at how the initial development started and now how it's been reduced to, I think, in the low 800s, perhaps in the 700s for home development, I think it's moving in the right direction, and I'm sensitive to all those concerns. You know, I was approached by a young lady on the south who had a couple young kids, and she had moved there. Her parents had been there, and she'd moved in there. And she and I were talking, and she said at one time they had promised a pool for the south, and she was wondering if that was ever going to happen. I didn't have a comment for her, but I listened to what she had to say. I have a friend on the north who lives on the lake, and he's got a very nice view, and he's concerned what the development will do to his quality of life if they put homes in across the lake. I have other friends who talk about, wouldn't it be nice to have a urgent care or a pharmacy? I hear what they have to say. And there's a couple down the street, an elderly couple, that I know quite well, on fixed income, that are concerned about what they've heard about the potential for the board proposing at some point in the future to buy some land back from the developer, and they're concerned that that might affect their homeowners' dues, or there might be an assessment towards them. And I listen to what they have to say about that too. You know, we're not. Excuse me, Jeff, you're going to have to wrap up real quick here. Oh, I'm talking that long? I didn't know that. Okay, I'll just say one thing. I want to maintain Mayberry. I want to encourage development, but I'm a person who's very strong in this. I will not endorse or vote for any measure that's going to increase homeowners' dues or assessments for the sole purpose of buying property on the north. Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, we're going to start with Rob. Which committee would you be interested in serving on and why?
To be honest with you, there's any of the committees would be, I would serve. Again, that's part of what I come to the board for. I feel that it's incumbent upon the members of the community to serve and keep the community as it is. I understand that the Martin Poole will be one of the board members that is terming out. He's finance, I believe. So if finance is open, then that's something I'd be willing to do. My qualifications for that is currently I have an administrative assignment to a large state facility. I make budgetary decisions almost on a daily basis regarding facility, equipment, personnel. Am I a banker with a huge financial background? No, but again, to me, it's about serving and doing the best I can. I know under the leadership of Martin, my dues have, the percentage my dues have increased under his leadership have been very minimal. And so again, that's something that I'd like to see continue. And I just think it's been very well managed, and under his tutelage, that's one of the departments that I would be willing to serve in.
Thank you. Greg?
I think my interest would be with the Compliance Committee, partly because of just my, what I bring to the table in terms of working with rules and regulations, and then trying to actually, in some of these situations, you've got to kind of figure out really what the problem is, and I think asking insightful questions and being able to gather enough information to come to some kind of a resolution that's favorable for everybody. And I realize there's a lot of kind of give and take in that department and having to try to work things out, and I think that would be an asset I could bring.
Okay. And Jeff?
Thank you. I would love to be on the Architectural Review Committee or the Parks Committee. The Parks Committee, I've had a lot of experience dealing with homeowners associations and also with construction defect litigation claims. I had a mediation business in 11 states and dealt extensively with that. I'm not an attorney, but working in claims management, I had to deal with decisions between parties, and we learned that compromise, the true compromise, was one in which both parties walk away equally dissatisfied. And so I think I could probably best suit in the Parks Committee, but I would like also the Architectural Committee. Thank you.
Okay. And Alex?
Well, there are a couple of committees that interest me. The compliance and governing and/or the governing documents would be of interest to me. I have worked at my job at writing contracts, and so I've done that. I have experience with that, and I also believe that upholding the CC&Rs is a quality of life issue that is important to many of my neighbors. I'm also very active, so I think the Parks and/or the Recreation Committee is something that I would enjoy taking part in too. Since I do work with young people at my work, I think I have a sense of what they think. I'd like to think I know what young people think, and so being able to tap into that for the young people in this community, I think would be something that I might be an asset at as well. But I would also recommend, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I would recommend maybe forming like a youth commission or something where our youth could participate in giving input to the board. And in fact, there are many school boards that have students, non-voting members of the school board as students. I would like to see our RMA look into something like that too, and have someone from the youth that is elected by the young people of this community to give us some input. I think that would be something I'd like to look at too. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with Greg. What do you think the new development will mean for Rancho Murieta?
You know, I think development brings with it a lot of challenges. I think development, just for the sake of development, can be harmful. It could also be a benefit. Depends on what's done. Depends on how it's actually put together. I think that, for instance, you could have a development downtown Sacramento for low-income housing. That might be a benefit for them, but it doesn't necessarily mean it would work for us. So you're going to have to work at kind of really looking at it. I also think that one of the problems you have is that the developers tend to come in with a bias. They tend to come in with giving you information they want you to have, not disclosing everything that you may need to make an informed decision. So I think when you throw it out there on growth, it just has to be really evaluated carefully as to what the favorable impacts are to the community and what the unfavorable impacts can be.
Jeff?
I'm very pro-development. I think we need rooftops. I think it's going to attract things like an urgent care and a pharmacy. I think we need those, especially for our seniors. I think increasing the number of homes, which will bring on other amenities, is going to increase our property values too. I've been to the presentation. I didn't agree with all of it, and I'm quite sure there'll be some more changes. The two things that I will stand firm on that I think are important is that we need to have unfettered access to all the shores of all the lakes by the residents. And then number two, we need to protect our water resources. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I like to start my economics class with my high school seniors with a quote from an economist. It says, "The economists know the cost of everything and the value of nothing." And I sometimes get a few chuckles from my students on that. But development's going to create a great opportunity. It's going to, the cost part that we know about, we're going to get an increased tax base. We're going to get the infrastructure upgrades that have been mentioned previously. All that's great. But we have to be cognizant of what do you put a value on for our water supply? Do we have a long-term plan for water? What is it worth to you to sit in traffic 10 minutes longer on Highway 16? We need to think about quality of life. That's why many of us moved out here. We have to think about property values. I would disagree with an earlier comment about that, what development might do to property values. So, ultimately we need to uphold the MBA and the density that's outlined in Exhibit H, I think. And ultimately we need development that's smart development that's done correctly. And I think that's a win-win for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more. Getting back to the question about what development means for the community, and basically it means change, and it's inevitable change. We're going to see development. We see it already outside the gates with the large hotel. Will be coming online very shortly. Hopefully the grocery store, and as far as the development inside the community, when that comes online, there's going to be change. I agree with Alex. Basically, upholding the MBA is going to be one of the best tools that we have to manage that, and that's the position that I come with. Is that growth is coming, development is coming, and it's going to be incumbent upon RMA to manage that in order to facilitate the best direction for the community with that growth. And so that means basically the facilities, more people. Obviously, more people means some of our spaces, our parks, the recreation lakes. Those things are going to get even more congested. So managing facility use with development is going to be a large part of what this board is going to need to do.
Thank you. Question number 4, and we'll start with Jeff. What are the most significant issues that the association will face in the next 12 months and why?
Well, without doubt, it's the development, new development, in my opinion. And I think the reason that it's a big challenge is that we seem to be groups here that are pulling against each other. And I think it's human nature for all of us to resist change. But I also think it's important for the board to try to motivate an atmosphere in which we start looking for similarities instead of differences. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, obviously, it is.
Hold on a second. I think.
Comes back this way, right?
Yeah, it should go to Alex.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. So I see several different challenges that are confronting this community. First off, we need to make sure we finish off the fiber optics transition and meet the needs of our neighbors who might have had some problems with that. I know we're almost done with that, so that transition has been, I think, good, and I'm glad we were able to do that. I know that there's some issues around landscaping in the townhouses. I'm sure we can find some common ground on how to move forward with that. I think the security gate and access at the new security gate, should that be manned? Is it just going to be an arm? I think that's something we need to talk about. Are we going to be multiple associations, or are we going to merge? I think that's something that that's a serious issue and needs to be addressed. What impact is that going to have on property values? So I know that the new map, I think, is coming out shortly. So we need to just, in the next 12 months, monitor how development kind of evolves. And again, hold true to that MBA. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Again, I agree with Alex that over the next 12 months, when that lot plan is finalized, the board is going to need to implement and enforce the mutual benefit agreement. In addition, I think even a more pressing issue and that is going to be the sale of the country club. I believe that the sale of the country club, which is basically what this community is built around, is kind of an unknown, and managing that transfer and what that means to this community is going to be it's going to be something that the board is going to need to address.
Thank you. Greg?
I think that the sale of the country club is big. I think that ties in kind of with the developer's plans and what's going to happen out here eventually. I think in the next 12 months probably will be the immediate decisions that have to be made in terms of forcing a developer to comply with the MBAs. But I do see there's going to be a big challenge, and I'm not so sure the community fully understands it. I'm not so sure I fully understand it yet. But I mean, there's a lot of enforcement that we cannot do, but there's some that we can. And so the challenge is trying to decide what we're empowered to be able to do as far as development goes and what we're not. I do believe that the developer probably has some rights that we're not going to be able to stop. So I think the immediate issue would be making sure that he's in compliance with what he can legally do. And that's where the board is going to have to just dig in and really get a really good understanding of what that compliance is all about.
Thank you. Our 5th question, and we'll start with Alex. What are the most significant issues that the association will face in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, besides the ones that I just mentioned in the last question that don't get resolved in the next 12 months, those will obviously be issues to be addressed down the road as well. But ultimately, again, the idea of smart growth, right? I mean, we need to make sure that the development is done in a wise fashion. Developers have agendas too, and it's up to the board to protect the people of this community and to work with the developer to make sure that we have smart growth, that the traffic issues are mitigated, that the water issues are addressed. If we're facing a new normal in terms of weather pattern, that's a concern. That's something we need to confront head on. We can't avoid that. I also think the growing number of young people in this community, I think it's great that we have a lot of a youth movement, so to speak, and we need to tap into that. I know my niece and nephew who don't live in this community, live in Sacramento. They're trying to figure out what they want to do. What paths do they want? And that's why I would, as a board member, want to look at the idea of a community center to serve our youth better, with a pool, with a theater. It just doesn't have to be all about sports, right? I mean, there's the athletes and there's the artists. Community theater, music. I think those are, I envision that in a community center. Meeting rooms that would be maybe larger than this would also be nice as well. So, we've got a lot of challenges, but I'm ready to roll up my sleeve and start doing this. So, thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
So looking 3 to 5 years out and what development is going to look like, we're going to have hopefully a nice grocery store and some development outside the gates, as well as at the hotel, some new neighborhoods, and probably significantly more people inside the gates. Again, those issues as far as dealing with security and traffic, and how is RMA going to appropriate the funds from that development, from those dues, in order to maintain the infrastructure and the community that it is today? Where do you put those monies? Do you put it into parks for the kids? Do you put it into cameras for the stop signs to mitigate some of the traffic? Do you put it into recreation? What do you do with those funds? How do you manage that? And again, I think the board, it might be a good problem, it might be a bad problem, but I just think if you have a cohesive board working together over the next 3 to 5 years, I think they can do good things.
Thank you. Greg?
I would anticipate that while in the next 12 months, the issues of development are going to be kind of a constant ongoing topic, that I would hope in the 3 to 5 year time frame, it's somewhat resolved. That the developer probably at that point has plans one way or the other, that there's some resolution. I think at that 3 to 5 year point is probably going to be a whole new set of challenges that are going to face us based on what those development plans that are finally approved are. Traffic, security, water. I mean, some of that development we're probably going to get stuck with, whether we like it or not, as a community. And so then we're going to have to figure out what are some equitable solutions that are going to be for the problems that are going to come out of that development.
Thank you. Jeff?
Well, my thought on this, Ed, those are day-to-day things, and I agree with all those concerns, but I don't think the board has done a very good job in the past of properly communicating with the residents, or the residents haven't picked up. I'm not saying it was an intention, but a good example was Greenfield, where they made an arrangement. There was a good business arrangement with Greenfield, and I don't think it was properly conveyed to the residents, and the residents mistook how that was arranged. It was really well done by the board. I'd like to see more community involvement with the board. I'd like to see us encourage more inclusiveness of the South area residents. The aquatic center years ago, there was some real angst on that side of the river when we were talking about putting the aquatic center up there near the road. And they felt like you were putting it down Sacramento as far as they were concerned. I think we need to find a way to get the South more involved and feel like they're more a part of Rancho Murieta. And I think, too, we have to work within the MBA on developing responsible development and hold fast on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. If I'm not mistaken, we do have a couple of questions from the audience, so give us a couple of minutes, eat some cookies, get an update on the score, and then we'll reconvene in just a couple of minutes here.
Rob's trying to look at it back there.
No, I can't see that.